Welcome to the Property Maintenance Show. We're here with your show's hosts, Albert Taylor and Paul Quell, and we're brought to you by Octagon Work Services. Our main mission is to discuss the property management industry, vendor relations, homeowner and tenants, controversial topics in the property management industry, stuff that no one else wants to talk about. So, hope you enjoy it, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Property Maintenance Show. I'm here with my co-host, the PM Tech Guru, Albert Taylor, and myself, the legendary co-host, Paul Quill. Today we have a special episode and a special guest. Jay Shaw is the General Manager at Welcome Home Management based in Canada. Jay is a successful licensed real estate agent and property management coach. And today we're going to be asking him some questions and opening up some very interesting topics. Welcome, Jay. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Yeah,
Doing
welcome.
well, thanks. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
hmm
Excellent. So Jay, I want to jump right into this. Kind of just starting off with a basic question. How long have you been in the property management business and what do you enjoy the most about the business?
Yeah, so started the company back in 2016. I had one of those experiences with a property manager that I hired a property manager to look after a student rental that I bought and spent more time managing the property manager and really kind of set me on this path. I don't think anyone ever kind of sets out to be a property manager like when you're in school or university. Like you never really kind of go down that path. I think the biggest
hmm
thing that I enjoy about property management is every day is different, right? There's so much variety in what we do. And a lot of what we're able to do is really work with people and help improve their lives, right? Or help solve problems. And that's what I like about property management. It's challenge, it's being solutions oriented, but most importantly, real estate's about people and it's about how you can, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this later on the show, but it's not about the bricks and mortar. It's about people and it's about really finding solutions to their problems and finding ways to work together.
Okay.
hmm
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think I was telling Paul that. Yeah, it's you either love the industry or you hate it. So you, yeah, you like helping people, or yeah, if you're just thinking about it, the bricks and mortar, like you said, then yeah, it's not gonna work.
It's very easy to get jaded, I think, in this business. I mean, you see people at their best and you also see people not at their best. And I think sometimes it's hard not to take that personally, but it
hmm
can be very easy to become jaded, right? Especially I wear two hats, right? As a licensed realtor and in property management. And a lot of the agents that I know, they don't want to do it. They're just like, Jay, can you handle this? Jay, can you and your team deal with this? And that's
hmm
fine for us, right? Because at the end of the day, it's our job in property management to help them look good, right? And I was talking to a colleague yesterday and he was like, I got a referral the other day from another agent and I don't want to do it. Like, I'm not interested. Can you just handle it for me, right? And for us, that's really what we've focused on the last 7 years is building up that reputation so that we can provide those agents and those investors the peace of mind in terms of engaging in property management.
Okay.
hmm
Awesome. Yes.
No, I absolutely agree with you, Jay, about, resolving those difficult challenges in the business. It's really so satisfying. I remember as a maintenance manager, trying to handle the, difficult maintenance challenges. And, when you overcome them as well, you really gain a lot of knowledge and you learn a lot. And even from mistakes as well. You know, I think one mistake I made was the manufacturer warranty with HVAC units. And I think it was a miscommunication between myself and the homeowner. And they didn't, when they signed up with us, they didn't let us know they had like a manufacturer
Yeah.
warranty with the HVAC unit. And then once that mistake happened, since then, like right after, I created this process where when a new homeowner joins, I'm like, do you have a manufacturer warranty? Give me the serial number.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of unit is it? And then I would save it on the database, so the CRM software, and basically prevent that issue from happening again.
Absolutely.
So to like overcome those challenges, it's an amazing feeling. So I absolutely agree. with you there.
And sometimes you have to bite the bullet, right? Sometimes you do make mistakes, right? And I think your clients, or our clients anyways, have much more respect for us when we say, look, we screwed it up. Like, and it's not all about all the time about, getting the checkbook out, right? It's how do we fix this? But sometimes you do have to do that, right? And at the end of the day, it's about doing the right thing.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, yeah. It's actually we're two sides of the page here. Paul's more the analytical side. I'm more the emotional side. So I struggled a lot not taking things personally. Like you said,
Mhm.
yeah, I really struggled with that. Actually, yeah. Tenant's angry, and I'm like, oh, well, they're directing at me. Okay, I'm trying to help you. Don't bite me.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. It's a challenge, but yeah, yeah, we got some stuff done.
Hmm.
Yeah,
All right. So yeah, let's. I do have another question here,
Yeah.
Jay. So I guess for our listeners and viewers, what areas do you manage? Like which properties and which areas?
So, as you mentioned, Paul, we're based in Canada. We're located outside of the Toronto area, about
Hmm.
45 minutes outside of Toronto, and our area is it's 5 different cities. So we have the city of Hamilton, which is about 500,000 people. And then we have 4 other cities in an area called Niagara Region, like towards Niagara Falls area. And we go all the way down to basically the Canada-U.S. border right at Buffalo. So it's a pretty vast area that we cover. I would say probably about, when you add up all of the populations of the town, you're probably about 800,000 people in those 4 or 5 cities. A lot of what we manage small multi, single family, legal duplexes, triplexes, all the way up to about 20 units is kind of what we do. And a majority of the properties are legal duplexes. So
mhm.
part of on the sales side, what I do is I show people how to build wealth or force the appreciation by buying a single family home, whether it's a bungalow or and really force the appreciation by adding a second unit in the basement.
Okay. Actually, I have a kind of an off question we don't have here. Which area do you consider to be the most challenging of those areas there?
Area or type of property?
Area, I think. I like to distinguish, I think, areas. I used to manage LA, for example, and
Yeah.
that's pretty challenging. So yeah,
Yeah,
which
no, yeah, I
yes.
bet. For the
Hmm.
most part, like, I mean, most of the cities that we operate in are fairly, they're fairly, I don't want to say easy, right? But they're fairly average in terms of that. Like we don't really manage in kind of bad areas. I think like as we've grown over the years, the big thing that we've been able to do now is be a little bit more choosy, right? Choose the
Hmm.
properties that we want to work with, choose the owners that we want to work with, those types of things.
Hmm.
I think from a property standpoint, we managed up to about 5 units for a number of years. And then over the last couple of years, we've gotten into the small multis, right? So basically 6 to 20 units is a whole other world, right? For us is, we've really mastered the kind of the single family, 1 to 5 units. Like we've got that pretty much down pat. But where we've really experienced some challenges as we grow is really that small multi because it's a whole other beast, right? Even
Hmm.
though you've got the economies of scale, you've got everything under one roof, they're a little bit more challenging to manage.
Okay. Well, I guess that question comes because I actually have two friends in Canada, and they've chosen to rent their properties themselves, and they say
Mhm.
it's a nightmare. Uh, Well, just conversating with them, it sounds like it might be harder than the U.S. because of the laws that protect the tenants.
Oh, absolutely, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely, right? Like we operate in Ontario. Ontario is the Residential Tenancies Act, which governs, landlords and tenants. It's very pro-tenant, right? Like, I mean, you look at, things in the U.S., like, for example, we don't have the ability to not renew a lease, right? After 1 year, the
Hmm.
lease reverts to a month-to-month tenancy. We don't have the ability to say, yeah, we're throwing you out, right? Majority, I would probably say 85% of rents in Ontario are rent control. So you're only able to raise the rent by a certain amount each and every year. For example, this year it's 2.5%.
Hmm.
There is one loophole, which is basically any property that was built after 2018 is not rent controlled. but that's the only opportunity, right? And I think as we all know, with watching what's going on in the global economy in terms of interest rates and stuff like that, it's becoming harder and harder, especially on the single family. It's becoming harder and harder to cash flow.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's what they said. You have to be really, really careful who you put in your into your property. You may
Because
not
once
be
they're
able to
in,
get
it's
them
hard
out.
to get them. Yeah,
Yeah,
once they're in, it's hard to get them out.
yeah, that's scary. Yeah. So do you think that's pushing more people towards the property management industry?
So we're seeing more and more people actually move their investments to the U.S. right, and predict predominantly into some of the red states, some of the pro landlord states. We're seeing a lot of people either refinance or cash out. Obviously, probably in the last 12 months, I've seen lots of colleagues do that. We've lost some business because of that. But we are seeing a
Mm,
shift to both, international investing, not specifically the U.S., but also, abroad, like places, like looking at short-term rentals, vacation rentals, those types of things. And, in countries like Mexico or the Dominican or, things like that, they're looking
mm.
for more of a lifestyle investment.
Okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
so Jay, I know mentioning there about, the difficulties of finding the right tenants. So what is your screening process like? How do you kind of filter
Yeah.
out good and bad tenants?
Yeah, I mean, the fundamentals are still there, right? I think like with the way we set up our screening process is there's three, I like to call them checkpoints that we're going to kind of screen them at, right? There's the initial screen where it's like we get a little bit more information from them. First of all, like if you go on our website, you can actually book a showing directly through our website, right? So we call that step one, which is more the soft screen. Tell us a little bit about yourself. When are you looking to move? And a little bit about your income, right? And we ask those questions more from an affordability standpoint to
Mm,
see if they're a fit, right? So that's step number one. Step number two is the actual showing. So obviously we book showings. We book them all at the same time to create kind of like an auction type mentality with a leasing agent. So we could have 3, 4, 5 different groups there. And then that gives us another opportunity to do, I like to call it a check, right? So our leasing agent is kind of, asking them questions like kind of, are they showing up on time? Those types, they showing up on time? What type of vehicle do they drive? Like, how do they present themselves? How do they talk? Like those types of things. And then the third one is the actual application process, right? When we do kind of, we're looking at, their background, we're looking at their documents, we're looking at their credit, right? And then it's a little different in Canada. Like, I mean, where, I know in the US, Albert, like it's, you're governed by fair housing and stuff like that. In Canada, we actually, we underwrite the applications, but there are no fair housing guidelines. There are human rights guidelines. You can't discriminate that
mm.
way. But at the end of the day, it's the homeowner's choice, right?
Okay.
Which a lot of property management companies and landlords are kind of like flabbergasted at. You're like, you let the
Mm,
owners pick, and it's like, well, we kind of guide them along the way and give them our best advice, right? But at the end of the day, the choice is yours. So
mm,
that's kind of how we do it, and we set it up that way. Obviously, like with the application process, we charge for that, so it's another barrier. But if you're
mhm.
not willing to pay I think we charge $25 or something like that. If you're not willing to pay the $25 to apply, this probably isn't the right property for you.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's kind of good, right? The homeowner can decide who they want in their house. So if they choose badly, then you chose them, man.
So it's good and it's bad, but like, I mean,
Hmm.
it's one of those things where it's like, it kind of waters down our expertise as property managers because at
Mm,
the end of the day, we're putting the decision in the hands of an individual that doesn't have the same expertise as us, right? It's like
hmm.
me coming to your business and basically saying, that's nice, Paul and Albert, like, but I'm going to do it because I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to make that decision anyways,
Right.
right?
I like
Where
the
it's the
picture.
only profession where that happens, right? And I mean, it's good and bad. And I mean, we work with a lot of investors that, we've been able to educate them along the way. Like, I mean, since I started Welcome Home, like, I mean, I've really kind of trying to build it with our clients is more of like, I'm going to educate you along the way. I'm going to tell you why this person might be better than that one. And even though we give them that choice, a lot of the times they defer to us, right? They're like, well, what do you think, right? And I mean, as we've grown, like I have a team around me now, but like the reality is sometimes, my team will be like, well, they want to talk to you, right? Because like when I started it, like everyone else, it was just me, right?
Hmm.
I was the property manager, the leasing agent, the maintenance coordinator, the finance guy, right?
Janitor.
So they still know, like, and trust me. And really what I'm trying to do is have them trust the team, right? Because at the end of the day, that's the big struggle, right? As we grow our company, it's not for me to be less involved in the day to day. It's more for them to have the comfort to know that my team has been trained by me. My team has the same kind of, thought process that they want to educate our owners too, right?
Mm.
So I mean, that's kind of how we do it. And I think like over the years, we've been very successful in doing that. Like we've built a very strong, experienced team that, now it's like I see some of our investors out at events and they're like, hey, I just want to let you know, like we dealt with, this person at your office and they were fantastic. And that's what I want to hear, right? Like I miss like, being able to take those calls and have those calls and that, but I think it's really important for them to have that relationship with the team.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Well, like we say here in the U.S., let them spread their wings.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, Jay, that you have kind of a different approach because a lot of property management companies that we've spoken to have this approach of, oh, it's first come, first serve
Hmm.
with the tenants, and they make sure that, oh, the homeowner's not going to see the process and they only get to know the tenant when they're on board.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting concept that you have that you're doing it kind of the opposite way. And I do agree because especially what you said about how your expertise, it makes it a bit more difficult when the
Mhm.
homeowner picks. Because let's say, for example, right, the homeowner didn't make the right choice because they don't have that experience, then as the property manager, it could be a bit more difficult, to get that tenant, on board with kind of the leasing terms and everything. So
Well, I
it's
mean, we can do that, right? I think that's the biggest thing is just
right,
like, I mean, it allows us to kind of be, the bad guys a little bit, but at the same time, it's like we've had owners that have picked wrong, and it's never
right.
it's never an I told you so. It's more how do we get you out of this jam, right? Because I think
Mhm.
we all know, having been in the business, there's nothing worse than a bad tenant experience, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
and no one benefits from us sitting on a call basically being like, well, Paul, I told you so, right? Like it's more like, okay, we collectively picked wrong, right? And that's how I always put it. We collectively picked wrong, right? Takes it because like they're coming to you sheepishly to basically
Mhm.
say like, all right? Because they're worried that you're going to say, well,
I told you
you
so.
know, Jay told me, right? And we basically say these are the, when we underwrite the application, here are the good elements of the application, here are the not so good elements. We make a recommendation
Mhm.
and then they make that call. So then if it goes sideways, then it's like, great, here's what we're going to do, right? Together, we're going to do this. Together, we're going to set you up with, a legal professional. Together, we're going to start the eviction process.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's like, knock on wood, I've never had an owner that's basically been like, well, it's your fault or you did this or anything like that. It's more, okay, can you help us? Right. And even if it's like a place, because the other thing that we do a lot of tenant placement, right? In addition to full service management.
Mhm.
So we get a lot of owners where it's like we help them find a tenant and fill the property. And then obviously we turn them over to them for them to
Right.
manage it. And then if it goes the opposite way, like they call and it's like, okay, let's help you, right? At the end of the day, my goal is to be a resource, right? To help, to educate, and to be a resource, right? So there's no point in me sitting back in my chair to basically say, I told you so, right? It's more,
Mhm.
I've been there. I've been down that path personally in my own rental properties, not too
Mhm.
often. It sucks. It's not pleasant and it's stressful. So it's
Mhm.
like, how do we do that? How are we able to work together to walk you through the process? And,
Mhm.
being that resource, setting them up with that legal professional the feedback that we get is like, wow, like your people are bang on. And that's
Mm,
what we want.
okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think most people be like so tempted to say, "I told you so." Be like, huh. Yeah, I
Of
know.
course, right? I mean, everyone
Mm-hmm.
would, but like, who does it benefit,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Right? You can hang up the phone and say, I told you so, but it's like, you don't say it to the client, right? It's like, it's more so, okay, like the, I think part of it is like having gone through the situation myself or the process, you know what to expect, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
know kind of that's the other thing too. In Canada, you talk about some of the challenges. So for us so we don't go to court. We go to what's called the tribunal, which is a quasi-judicial process. Um, property managers cannot represent landlords it's called the landlord-tenant board. So we have to refer them to a licensed paralegal.
Oh,
So
okay.
right now, the wait to get an eviction is anywhere between 6 to 8 months. That's months with an M.
Oh, wow.
In COVID, it was almost 2 years to get to the landlord-tenant board.
That's a nightmare.
Wow.
It's an absolute nightmare, and
Oh,
it's woefully inadequate. It's completely disorganized,
Mm-hmm.
and I am grateful every single day for the paralegal that we use in our company because she has the patience, she has the skill set, the ability to work with them, and most importantly, she has the compassion to be like, hey, listen, like this is where we're going. This is the process. She walks the client through everything and
Mm-hmm.
works seamlessly with our office because at the end of the day, like we're not the client because the homeowner is the client, but she leverages our office. We need this document. We need that document. We need this. So it's like, so the client is the client, but we do all the work for the client because we have all the documents.
Okay. It is a bit different than
Yeah.
things over here.
mhm.
Yeah.
If you could, what do you think should change within the eviction process in Canada? Like, what would make it
The
better and
tribunal.
more,
How much time do we
what?
have, Paul?
For the tribunal.
Maybe briefly, if you have some points or maybe your opinion on
To be
the.
honest, a stick of dynamite
Mm-hmm.
because the thing is so like I don't say that lightly, right? Because it's
Right.
like I know they're trying, but at the same time it's like we're dragging, kicking and screaming into the 21st century, right? Like we just
Yeah.
started in COVID doing online hearings on Zoom, right? And the tenants are complaining that they don't have access, they don't have connectivity, they don't have the availability,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like you're slowly doing this, right? The other thing is like it's like it's by mail and it's by they just retired the fax machine like a year and a half ago, right? It's 2023.
Mm-hmm.
My kids don't even know what a fax machine is, right? So it's like, but I go back to kind of like a lot of people ask me this, so like, well, what do you think that the system needs, right? The system needs the US model, which is like, at the end of the day, it's like, we have situations in Canada where tenants are holding the homeowner hostage,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
By
Right.
not vacating, not being able to move, not being able to sell the house, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
in Canada, the only way you can sell the house and get the tenant out is if the purchaser or the purchaser's immediate family are moving in. You can't just go to the tenant and say, I'm selling and you have to leave,
Right.
right? I think the control needs to be back on the landlord, right? Number one is that like if you don't want to renew that tenant after the term of their lease, you should have the ability to do that, right? Number two, right, is that I mean, we're looking at now, like I mean, everything is rent control, and I don't think you're ever going to get rid of rent control in Ontario, right? I think any government that tries to is like political suicide, and you would never get reelected, right? Because no one is going to stand up for the rights of the landlord in politics, right? But I think there has to be the ability. Like, I mean, we had interest rates of like 1.5% back in 2021, and now they're at 8% in Canada. 7 and 8%. I just renewed one of my rental properties myself, and it was over 8%. But I can only raise the rent 2.5% this year.
Okay.
Last year was
Well,
2.5%. The year before it was zero, right? So it's like at some point, like I'm a negative on one of my houses, and it's like, well, I'm now basically paying for the tenant to live in my house.
yeah, that's quite a thin margin, like to even, the profitability,
Mm.
you know, like if it's stuck at that percentage, yeah, it makes things a lot more difficult. And
Like, I think you really just have to, like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like you need to give, there needs to be a balance, right? And it's like, the landlord tenant board, you might as well just call it the tenant board, right? Because you get these adjudicators, you go in, and it's the landlord is on, it's a non-payment of rent issue, and the landlord's on trial. Now, it has nothing to do with like the tenant hasn't paid rent in 3 months, right? Or like the other thing is you go there, the tenant hasn't paid 3 months of rent, and the first thing the adjudicator says is, well, let's set you up on a payment plan over the next 6 months to get you caught up. Well, it took us 6 months to get here. The tenant hasn't paid 3 months, so we're 9 months behind, right? And now we're going to give them we're going to give them a payment plan.
Right. Free housing.
So it's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like the Aussie model where it's like the tenants are kind of like a endangered species, where it's like they're protected. You can't do this, you can't do that. And I'm not saying load them up on fees or anything like that, but I think right now the balance is like this, and I think it really needs to be kind of like this.
I think so, yeah.
But I don't think the governments of the day have the courage to move it that way, right? Because at the end of the day, like they get elected on 4-year cycles and mandates, and it's like I can't really see average Joe citizen being like, I'm going to vote for that party because they, support landlord rights, right? Maybe my fellow real estate investors would vote for them, but the reality is like it's a no-win. It's a no-win solution for governments of the day.
Yeah, it's all about the votes.
Yep.
Yeah. Actually, a short story about my friend there in the Northern Lands. He actually preferred to wait till the tenants left. I think they went somewhere on vacation. He got all their stuff out of the house, and he preferred to face the police instead of going through all that judicial stuff. Yeah, and thankfully the tenants just like they kind of like they didn't go the legal route, so they just went somewhere else. But yeah, he had moving trucks and everything there with their stuff in it. It's like, yeah,
Yes.
here's your trucks, please leave. And well, he's not in jail.
Crazy.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
real story.
Right. And there's people that do that, right? And they're like, I'll face the music, right?
Yeah, better to face the police and judicial.
I have a question. So, that's obviously your opinion about making changes, Jay. In Canada, would it work if, for example, let's say a bunch of investors or property managers got together and made a petition to the local government or the city hall? I'm not sure how it works to kind of like protest for change. Has that ever been done or?
Don't think that's Canadian.
I don't know. I'm just asking. I'm not sure. That maybe Jay.
On the tenant side, what they've been doing and what the movement that's growing is these rent strikes, right? Because like as we continue to go like this in terms of cost and affordability, right? Like I mean, the stuff that we're renting now is like, I mean, the costs are they are unaffordable. But the reality is like a lot of our clients need to try and at least break even our cash flow. I mean, I think like we have a couple of groups that are more advocacy groups, but I don't think like banging the drum and like creating protests and stuff like that is gonna work, right? I think like the way to try and do it is through quiet diplomacy, small incremental changes. Like, like I said, like we're like this right now, but in order for us to get like this, like it's going to take some time, right? And there's a couple of groups that have been somewhat successful in doing that. But it's a slow, very, very slow process.
Yes.
Yeah. And I will say as well, in California, there's a similar loophole that if the homeowner moves into the property, that the tenant has to leave. So that there's a similar law in California. I have been a part of a few eviction processes. Yeah, quite a headache in California as well. Lots of notices, letters, attorneys, back and forth. And then eventually it could end up in court. And then after all of that and all the legal fees, then eventually the tenant's out.
Right.
But then, like you said, Jay, it's a minus. All that money spent on legal fees and, certain documents have to be made. Yeah, it's such a difficult process because I feel like you said, like the law is on the tenant's side these days, and then with the internet, they just do their research and start looking up laws. Oh, what's my rights as a tenant? Oh,
Hmm.
they can't evict me. So then they stop paying rent and they bury their head in the sand and they don't want to communicate with you. And you're trying to just call them, be like, hey, look, let's sort this out. What can we do? You
Yeah.
know, can
Oh,
you make
100%.
can you make any kind of payment? I remember I made a phone call and asking a tenant that was getting evicted. I'm like, look, can you pay something today?
Yeah.
Like anything? Oh no, I have no money. I'm like,
$2.
you must have something.
Mhm.
So it's just it's so difficult. Yeah, I completely see where you're coming from, and it sounds there's similarities, in Canada in a way, with the US.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
there are similarities. I think there's a lot of cultural stuff too. That Canada doesn't want to really mirror the US because they still want their identity.
Mhm.
I think that's part of it too. I know my Canadian friends, they're like, oh, no, no, we're not the US, we're Canada. So, yeah, they like to make that difference,
There
distinguish.
you go.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I know, oh, you're Canadian. Okay, I get it. That's that's good. Yeah, it's a lot of cultural stuff too. I heard different areas of Canada have their different laws too, like Montreal and Ontario.
Yeah, so some of them are a little different in terms of how they set them up, but every province is a little bit different. So they all kind of, it's like the different states, right? Like, and I think like California is moving dangerously close to kind of how Canada is right now. So that's not surprising.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I mean, it definitely things like that. So.
Okay,
mhm.
yeah, definitely. Here's a question, really good one, about your maintenance department. We haven't talked a lot about maintenance there in Canada. I know it gets really cold, so there's a lot of frozen pipes and stuff. But yeah, just my friend actually, he talks about his wood house. It gets so cold that the house makes noises. I mean, the shifting of the wood. He actually put on the microphone one time, and it's like, wow, that's your house, man. But
Well, it's not all like that. I mean, the
mhm,
further north you go, like the colder it gets, right? Like
mhm,
we're in southern Ontario. Like I mean, it's I think our coldest day here is minus 10 degrees Celsius, right? I think that's our coldest day. Like I grew up, in the northern part of Ontario, right? Not quite as far north as, the friend you mentioned, but we
mhm.
used to get in some of the winters, it was minus 30. And then with the wind chill, it was minus 40 something. So those were
Mhm.
very cold,
Yes.
very cold days. But like in terms of maintenance, like, um, I mean, it's very rare. Like, I mean, Christmas Eve last year, we had a big cold snap down here. We had a couple places with frozen pipes, and it's like those were not fun. And obviously, like,
Mhm.
we have to do things like that. But a majority of what we do the preventative maintenance right before the winter, and we're actually in the process of starting that next month, going into October. It's really kind of turning off the outside water door, cleaning out the gutters, downspouts, eaves troughs, servicing the furnace because I think we all know furnace never
Mhm.
goes on the warmest day of the year. It always goes on the coldest day of the year.
Mhm.
So just making sure that those are serviced before the winter and addressing any potential issues that might come up. So I mean, those are some of the things. Like we're really proactive on maintenance. Do a lot of preventative maintenance. So it's like we do that, and then in the spring we do the opposite, right? Get the property ready for the spring and summer, right? Turning on the water, right? So that the tenants
Mhm.
can water their grass and, water their flowers and all that stuff and checking smoke detectors, changing the furnace filters, all of those good things. That's how we try and set it up, right? In terms of like being more proactive than reactive. And that really helps us too. And actually a lot of former tenants have come back to live with us and, where it's like they've moved, but then when they're looking for another rental, they've come back because they're like, these guys are on top of things. They're sending people, right? They're doing regular inspections. They're doing the right things. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's really what we want to do. I mean, obviously we work for the owner, right? And we always have that balancing act of like firm but fair. But at the same time, it's like, we have vacancies that we have to fill and we get paid by a management fee. So it's like the best way to do that is to, be seen as, providing, if you're asking a premium price, then you better be providing a premium service.
Exactly, yeah. Well, that's a huge difference, I think. I think Paul agree with this one. We're more reactive here. So we let the stuff happen, then we react.
Yep.
So, that would be really nice if we're more like Canada then, proactive.
Well,
There's lots of management companies that do that too, right? I think like some of the top ones, like in the U.S. and are like that, right? They plan ahead, right? I mean, this business is very cyclical, right? It's like rent comes in on the first, right? Maintenance plays out, it's dispersed, right? And then it's like rent comes in on the first. So it's like if you're doing it properly, like obviously you're going to have like this leaky faucet, this, this furnace check, this other thing. But at the same time, it's like, if you're planning ahead, okay, like winter's coming, we should probably get the furnace checked, right? Before the winter. Spring's coming, we should probably get the AC checked because the AC never goes on the coldest, the coldest day. It always goes on the,
Warmest.
most stifling day, right? And then the tenant calls and it's like, they want someone there 2 hours ago, right? And just things like that, right? Getting into the property regularly, right? Making sure that there's no damage, like all of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead, Paul. Paul had something.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to interrupt. I was loving the conversation there. So, for example, Jay, you mentioned that you try and do some repairs prior to the winter coming. Do you send an email blast to all the tenants, just kind of reminding them, or how does that work?
Yeah, so in Canada, we have to give 24 hours notice anytime we enter the property. So we always have to give 24 hours written notice.
Okay.
So up until last year, we had to actually go with a piece of paper, hand it to the tenant, put it in the mailbox, slide it under the door.
Right.
That was up until like a year ago, right? Year and a half ago.
Right.
Now we can use this thing called email, which I'm not sure if you guys have heard of it yet or not, but we can actually send an email, which
Yes.
the majority of people are on now
Yep.
to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we set ours up really simple, right? Like we don't try and be like the phone company guy where it's like we'll be there sometime between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. All of our properties have lock boxes, right? And we're in the process right now of actually potentially moving towards electronic locks, right? But what we've done since like we were a much smaller company is that we give them a 4-hour window. Like we're going to send someone between, 10 to 2, 12 to 4, whatever. And if you're unable to be there, the technician will access the property via the lockbox. Well, the minute they hear that, they're like, oh my God, I don't even have to be here. And this is amazing, right? And then we just leave them a door hanger and says, hey, we're here today. This is what we did. Like, if you have any questions, call the office.
Oh, okay.
But our tenants love the fact that we're sending someone, and B, they don't have to be there, right? Because we all have those horror stories of the phone company, the cable company, whoever coming, right? And it's like someone needs to be there. Someone needs to let them in, right? It's like, but I mean, and a lot of people would be like, well, I don't know if I would do that. And it's like, but a majority of the trades that we work with have been with me since day one. The plumber, the HVAC guy, the appliance repair person, they've all been with me since day one, right? And now, like, depending on how many maintenance issues you have, like our tenants know them, right? Where they're like, can you send John, or can you send Terry, or can you, like, they know the technician, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but like, I just run the properties as if they're mine, right? And that's how I've always done it, right? Because I think the number one thing that we always, kind of get shot back at, or the objection when we're meeting a new client or someone who's kind of on the fence about property management, is they sit on the call and they have their arms crossed like this and they say, well, no one will look after the property better than me. And it's like, and I think that's bull. I honestly think that's bull, right? Because at the end of the day, I've had clients that are like, well, Jay, what are you doing all this stuff for? And I'm like, well, because this is what I do on my property. They're like, well, I don't want that. It's like, well, like, why? Well, it costs too much. And it's like, well, maybe we're not a fit, right? Because we can not service the furnace, but guess what's going to happen? The furnace is going to go down on the coldest day, and the technician is going to say, like, you need $1,000 in parts, or you need a new one. And, at least if we know, because that's the other thing that we do. And it's like our guys are not there to sell, right? And neither are we. But I think we know, like, when that furnace goes down or when that air conditioner goes down, especially now, there are no reserves. It's like, oh crap, like we need a furnace or we need an air conditioner and we need it like today and it's going to be $4,000.
Mhm.
But if we're sending someone regularly, right, they can say like, look, the furnace has probably got about 5 years of useful life left in it. You might want to consider putting money aside.
That's a good
And
thing.
we've done that. Like when we do that, like on our semi-annual reviews with our owners, and we say, listen, our guys are not there to sell, right? They're there to service and fix. But if we have to replace it, guess who's getting the call? Right. So
Exactly.
like it's, and for me, like that's what I want, right? Because it's like I've been the guy where it's like I get the call and it's like the furnace is down at your property, right? I had one of my former tenants move into one of my own personal properties because she wanted to come back. And in the span of a year, I basically had to do both the furnace and the air conditioner
Oh,
in the span of like 6 months from each other. And I was just like,
oh
you gotta
no.
be kidding, right? And the air conditioner went on the hottest day and she had a newborn. I was away on vacation with my kids. My HVAC guy calls me. He's like, I'm like, there's no way you can get that back running. He's like, no, Jay. I'm like, do it because you have to do it. Did I have the money? No, but you have to find it.
Mhm.
But at least if you're kind of planning ahead that you know that this might go or you might need a new roof or
Mhm.
try and budgetary plan. This is a business we're running, right? Landlord's not fun. Like landlording is not fun. And this is what we talk about with some of our clients that are, tenant placement clients. It's like, okay, what about this? And what about that? And it's like, because this is the value that we provide, right? We treat the property as if it were your own or our own. And secondly, like we're investors, so we get it, right? So we try and do a little bit of long range planning for you, show you kind of the cost, show you how your property stacks up against others in our portfolio in terms of like, you know, market rents, in terms of what we're paying in maintenance, those types of things, and going from there.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, I wish I've always looked at this again. I was a maintenance manager previously in the industry, and I always went through the same issue sometimes with homeowners where, well, I can't afford this. I don't have that money,
Mhm.
right? And I do agree with you. When they get the rent payment, they should be setting some money aside. But I just wish there was like this, I don't know what to call, like a
Like prepare for the
ma
future.
yeah, like a maintenance reserve fund, right?
Yeah.
So when
Mhm.
the rent comes in, that maybe a certain dollar amount's agreed upon that it goes into an escrow and
Yeah.
it sits there and it goes on a monthly basis when the rent comes in. So when
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
big repair comes, oh, you have $4,000 in your reserve. Would you like us to use this to
Yeah.
go replace
They're probably
your
saying no.
HVAC unit or
Yeah.
replace your water heater,
Yeah.
for example? That I feel would be great. I just haven't seen it. I always see like, oh, we have a $300 reserve limit or a
Yeah.
$500. But what about the major stuff like the roof, like you said? Um, I remember I had to approve like over $20,000 for a roof repair, and the owner didn't have the money. So luckily, we managed to set up a payment plan, and the vendor agreed to wait to be paid.
Mhm.
So that was lucky that it was agreed upon on both sides of the table.
Yeah.
But then I asked myself, like, oh, what if there was a reserve fund that automatically just went into an escrow and gradually built, and then they had some money in reserve. And let's say there was no repairs in 12 months, maybe the money could go back to the owner.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like it just
For
kind of resets,
for
right?
Christmas, right?
Go. There was no repairs. You've got $6,000 here. We're gonna get that sent over to you. Um, I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe Jay, I don't know. You could look into that, see if it's
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, I haven't either, right? Like, I mean, I know some of the different property management companies there, and it's like I've asked them, I'm like, are you guys, and it's funny, right? Because a lot of them are like they don't want to say anything, and I'm like, so I asked them questions about like, have you done this? Have you done like capital planning? Like, no, are you crazy? And it's like, but a lot of them are like they keep everything close to their chest, right? And the reality is that they're not my competition, right? My competition is the self-managing landlord, right? That's my competition,
Hmm.
right? I think we've all seen the stats of like, 70% of rental properties, right, are self-managed, right? Where only 30% are professionally managed, right? Obviously, it's different in Australia, which is like completely 70% are professionally managed and 30%. But like for me, what I've always tried to do kind of in our local service area is really raise the bar in property management, right? Like the bar is so low, right? It's, talking about proactivity and reactivity, and it's like talking about, communication. Like, one of the things that I put on my website, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit at the start of the podcast, was how I got into property management, right? And it's like, the key things for me, there was no transparency. There was a lack of communication. The billing was inaccurate, right? And it was disorganized, right? And if you go in there, I go in detail on our website on the story about that. And that's why I got into property management, because I firmly believed I could do a better job. Right. And, I think we all do, but at the same time, it's not as easy as everyone thinks. Right. And you have to work at it. You have to consistently kind of, push and, work with your team to basically put yourself in the tenant shoes, put yourself in the owner's shoes. What do they need? What are they looking for, right? I mean, a lot of this, like I said, this is about people. This is not about bricks and mortars and, replacing hot water tanks and, the fridge is broken. This is about people, right? And when people get in, the next, they're stable in the property. And then the first thing that happens to destabilize them is maintenance, right? And it's like something's broken, we need to get it fixed, right? And then they go back to their normal life, right? And then something else happens. You're expected to be there. You're expected to really help them solve that problem, right? And that's the biggest thing, right? They expect you to solve that problem. And I think that's what draws a lot of people to this industry, is that no day is ever the same. Every day is different. You wake up and I don't see them as problems. I'm like, all right, how are we going to solve this one? All right, how are we going to do this one? All right, what are we going to do, right? And the people that are on our team are problem solvers. They're solutions oriented. They're communicators. They're people that are putting themselves in the owner's shoes and the tenant's shoes on a regular basis, understanding that, you know what, you have no hot water right now. We need to get someone there ASAP because you're paying top rent and you have kids. You're not going to give your kid a cold bath or a cold shower, right? They need hot water. And if they can't get someone there, we need to find a solution on why. So that's how I put it together. And I think there's so much room for us all collectively to grow and most importantly, to raise the bar on property management.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, we have the similar standards over here too. Hot water heater goes out, you got to get somebody out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've dealt with so many of those ones.
Oh yeah.
And it's really about, the communication, making sure the process flows efficiently. Um, the one thing that makes it difficult, let's say you get a bid from a vendor and then the homeowner is kind of pushing back on that. That's where they're like, oh, I want a second bid. But then
Mhm.
the main thing, as either when you're working in maintenance, you get to know, you should learn the price list of different types of repairs and take notes of them, because then you'll
Absolutely.
know which vendor on your preferred vendor list has the best price to replace a water heater.
Yeah.
So then you'll know, listen, you'll tell the owner, look, this is our best guy. This is the best price. And it comes with this, it comes with this warranty, it comes with a labor warranty, etc.
Mhm.
It's really like trying to sell it. I always believe that moment of the process is like you become kind of
Sales guy.
semi-sales salesman, right? You're selling the repair to the owner like, look, this has to be done. It's necessary. They have no hot water, right? They need to take a shower. They need this. So it's like trying to make them understand. And
Yeah.
the thing with homeowners, like I always say this in my meetings, right, with Albert, is like, you could ask 10 people to, paint a picture, right? All 10 people will not paint it the exact same way
100%.
because every human being is different. We all think differently. And that's the same with homeowners. Like once you speak to them, you get to know who they are and then
Yeah.
you know how to speak to them because you cannot speak to every homeowner the same way. So
Yeah.
there's different ways to speak to homeowners differently.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I absolutely agree, Jay. And we're always pushing for change in the
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
Especially the tenant screening part. I would love for it to change. Kind of going back to that for a second, is like, this first come first serve thing in the US. I'm like, yeah, but there has to be more to it than just that. Like, what is really the filter process, minusing the income and all these other things? What about the personality of the person?
Right.
What if they're, they could have the best job and everything, and they meet all the criteria and they tick all the boxes, but then when they move in, they don't take care of the property.
Yeah.
They don't mow the lawn when it says on the lease agreement they're supposed to maintain the lawn. Because I know on some lease agreements, in California, the homeowner might say, "Oh, I'm going to pay someone to do it on a weekly basis,"
Yeah.
or the homeowner can choose to say, "No, I want the tenant to do it." But then the tenant doesn't do it, and then the grass is so long, and then the homeowner's upset. So I always feel like I just wish like that process could be looked into more deeply to
Hmm.
see if there is a resolution to it.
Oh, we did talk about that one time, like
Yeah.
implementing a psychology test. Yeah, the tenants go through this little test to determine their psychology.
Sure, that would go over real well.
I'm sure it would. Yeah. Yeah. So
They'd be like, "Are you testing if I'm insane or crazy?"
kind of.
I think after COVID, we're all a little nuts. So we're in property management after all.
I'll be honest, Jay. We still haven't figured it out, but we're not gonna give up. We're gonna keep trying to look at
Yeah.
different processes within the industry. We're always trying to figure it out.
Hmm.
And you should always be changing and adapting, right? Like, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I've learned, as a business owner, right? Because it's like, remember, like I started the company like probably like you guys did, just the two of you, right? It was just me, right? So all of my processes were in here. And to get them on paper was a step, right? But then as we grew, they started to break. And then you had to start to fix them, right? And improve them. You should consistently be improving all of those things, right? Whether you manage one property or 100 properties, or whether you're even self-managing, right? If you were to go away and you were to get someone, let's say like, friend, family member, even a neighbor to look after, your property, what are you going to tell them? What are you going to leave them with? Right? Oh, just, if they call, like, hopefully they won't call, right? Like that's the process of a self-managing landlord. They might call, hopefully they don't,
Right.
right? Here's a list of the vendors that you might need to call.
Yeah, that never works.
Yeah, well, exactly,
Yeah.
right? So,
Hmm.
but it's like we all probably started our business like that. Then it's like,
Hmm.
oh crap, right? And it's like
They
we
called.
started to add people. And it's like, okay, now we gotta add people. We gotta do this. We gotta do that.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, great. Yeah, just last question here. So, just for our public, what are some of the great benefits of your company, and what would attract new people to work with you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's always a great question. It's one of the questions that we talk about when we schedule introductory call with new clients, right? I think there's four key things, right? Number one, it's our why, right? Which is why do we do this, right? Our company culture is all about the client success, right? Every email that we send to a client, potential client, is signed off with not sincerely, but to your success, right? And really, our focus is to do more than anyone else is doing, right? I talked earlier about one of the things that really bothered me was like when a investor says, "Well, no one's going to manage the property better than me," right? I disagree with that. I think that we run the properties as if I ran them my own. So we do the exact same thing there. And really our core values, which are, we have four core values, which are open communication, transparency, action-oriented, and reliability. So those are the four key values that we talk about. So that's the first one. Second is our use of technology. So we really leverage technology early on in terms of building out our company. So all of our contracts are signed electronically. We have detailed inspection reports complete with photos that the owner gets every quarter. We do video tours. We have professional photos and ad design done. And all of our owner statements and rents are sent via direct deposit. So technology
Hmm.
is another key one. Third one is systems. We talked a lot about systems. We have operation manuals and checklists detailing each step of all of our processes, right? And we continually update those as we continue to grow. So having well-defined, well-oiled machine, and most importantly, systems to handle almost everything. And then the last one is really effective communication. So I talked about that. That's really, our number one core value is having effective communication. We have a live person that answers our phones. And if we miss a call, we're on another line, or the phones at the end of every day, we return every single missed call, right? So again, what we're trying to do is really change the dynamic of property management companies and really change the perception and really do better, right? Like I said, I really set up the company on the pain points that I had when I had that property manager, right? And really it started with those core values. And from there, I've really just built it out. So we want to work with people that are the best and the brightest, and most importantly, that embody those core values and those key things that set us apart. At the end of the day, the first thing we do is it's called a fit call, right? Because we're not a fit for everyone. So just like they're interviewing us, we're interviewing them.
Hmm.
And we've done that before where it's like we basically said, based on our discussion, we don't think you're a fit, right? We think that you should, potentially, manage the property yourself, right? Or they want to be more involved in the day-to-day or more involved in the management. And at the end of the day, it's like, we have a system, we have a process, this is our process. And it's like, if that's not going to work for you, then you should probably continue to do what you're doing. But at the end of the day, those are the four key things.
Okay, awesome. So you actually use that technology called email then?
Yeah, I know. Crazy. Don't tell the landlord tenant board in Canada.
Yeah, black magic.
There you go.
All right.
Excellent.
All right, great.
Well, I think that's the end of our show today. Again, I'd like to thank my co-host, Albert Taylor, and also thank you
Hmm.
to Jay Shaw for joining us today. And again, all the information for Welcome Home Management will be available if anyone's interested in having their property managed with Jay and his team. So again, thank you so much, Jay, for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah,
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and look forward to coming on in the near future.
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Definitely. Okay. Until next time, thank you, everyone.
All right.
Bye.